Myst, a seemingly simple adventure game which defied many expectations. With its premise of being lost on a puzzle-filled island, became a massive hit out of nowhere. This, along with The Seventh Guest, convinced the general public to upgrade their computers with cd-rom drives to play it. The game briefly became a pop culture icon, and was very controversial among quote-unquote gamers. It's well known how many ports the game has gotten over the years, but very little has been discussed about how many darn PC releases Myst has gotten. Myst is a special game to me. It's one of my favorite adventure games, and it has a fascinating history. It was known for being the best-selling PC game until The Sims kicked it in the knee, and the most ported adventure game of all time, as far as I know. With all the talk of ports, it came to my attention that there are many releases of Myst on personal computer platforms alone, many more than what most people seem to believe. In the interest of game preservation, I have narrowed it down to 6 versions which are significant enough to warrant a full playthrough. This may seem overwhelming, but I know Myst like the back of my hand. Aside from the music matching puzzle, which can seriously go. Now it's time to start off on a good note. The true original release which started it all. The Mac version. Contrary to popular belief, Myst started out as a Mac game in September 1993. The early wave of CD-ROM games were released on the Mac first. The final game was put together using a piece of software known as HyperCard, a program Apple first released in 1987 to allow users to easily create software programs known as HyperCard stacks. In a way, the design of HyperCard and its programs can be seen as a predecessor to the web. Its ease of use made it popular for creating various games, not just simple novelty games, but even commercial ones. Myst developer Cyan got their start with The Manhole. This simple exploratory game for children has a lot in common with Myst and its design. Cyan made other games for children, until they decided to target an older audience, and it snowballed from there. Myst moved from its original plan of hand-drawn images to join the trendy wave of 90s games to use pre-rendered 3D graphics. This original Mac release still uses HyperCard, with the game broken up into HyperCard stacks for each major location. Now for the original form of Myst itself, where the player navigates the world through a series of still images, with the occasional QuickTime video. Give me a moment to fix up the tiny window box job here. Better. Already, there's a lot of dithering on the images. This was necessary with how most computers topped out at 256 color modes at the time. Now, I don't have a lot to say about this original version until I compare it to the others, but there is some technical weirdness I should note. The audio has a lot of hissing on top of its low sample quality. Then the emulation shenanigans. The footage here is from PowerPC Mac emulator Sheepshaver, which I would call the best emulator ever if it worked the way it should. Myst worked fine, except I couldn't run the game in 256 color mode due to blanked out videos. However, running the game in quote, millions of colors mode reveals that quite a few video files are rendered at a higher color depth than they would normally display at. It mostly comes down to less dithering. There is a non-emulation related issue. Many aspects of Myst are speed sensitive. On a period correct Mac with a slow CD drive, the game moves much slower, which might feel like a proper walking pace for some. For those who found this too slow, there was the option for zip mode to fast travel previously visited locations. The game jumps from screen to screen very quickly on later machines and emulators, to the point where the slide transitions are too fast to be seen. Some small parts of the game are also speed sensitive, like the elevator rotation and mechanical age. Sorry to interrupt, but a little warning for this next clip. And the flashing blue light in Stone Chip is practically a rave light now. Before moving on to the next version, there is a curious unused graphic of a music box from the mechanical age. It's not known what this would have done. Still exists though. Onward to the original PC release. I can't find anything confirming if his version was released the same day as the Mac one, or came out in early 1994. Anyway, this was slapped together for Windows 3.1. For the footage here, I'm running Windows 3.1 under the PCM emulator. It's set up with an emulated 4666 MHz, Sound Blaster 16, and 4x speed CD-ROM, all for a more period-correct experience. Run the game, and well, obviously it's Myst on Windows. Now for the interesting bit. There are many technical differences between this and the Mac original, mostly due to how there's no HyperCard on Windows. This version was handled by the original publisher of Myst, Broderbund, who set out to rebuild the game under a new engine known as MOHAWK. This engine was designed to have a stack-like structure similar to HyperCard, to give the basic functionality required for this game. Despite how it was originally made for Myst, Broderbund got a lot of use out of MOHAWK. It was updated and used in educational titles like Living Books, Carmen Sandiego, and many others. It was even used in games like, well, I'll get to this one at some point. Now back to Myst on Windows. On further examination, there are slight additions and changes. Minor details like an added generator sound. Pilot light graphic, and spinning globe thingy is now purple for some reason. Those are tiny details which don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but there were two which caught me off guard. In the Stone Ship age, there's this creepy morphing hologram device. The PC version adds an appropriately unnerving music loop to this scene. The more notable change, the video from Sirius and Channelwood was reshot with a different actor. I'm not entirely sure why they went this far. It could be for a slight dialogue revision. In comparison to the Mac version, the engine change resulted in major technical differences between the versions. The images have been reprocessed with a slightly different 256 color palette. I have not noticed this until now, where a side-by-side comparison really brings out the differences. This is not to say that one is better than the other here, as it's on a case-by-case basis. One can have a more dithered look while the other looks smoother. After that, the FMVs have been re-encoded, and many of them have a slight color palette reduction. The screen transitions are disabled by default, not surprising with how slow they run here, on the same emulated system which doesn't have too much trouble running Doom. The final visual thing of note are how the slide animations used for doors and panels have been replaced by a simple wipe effect. Now the big part that could be seen as a downgrade, the audio. On the bright side, the Windows version doesn't have all the hiss like the Mac version. On the other end, some rare cases of sounds that are either lower quality or even missing on Windows. The MOHAWK engine can only handle one sound at a time, which is not entirely surprising with how other games behaved on this engine. However, it makes the audio transitions very jarring compared to the Mac. Aside from one occasion, which almost tricked me into thinking they got two sounds playing at once. They just swapped out one sound loop with another for one loop. Seriously, nice job to the dev who came up and implemented this. Not enough credit has been given to this clever little audio trick. Now for the big audio downgrade, the music has been cut in half. So it has some very jarring music loops for those familiar with the Mac original. Now, as seemingly downgraded the Windows version is, it's still a solid version of Myst. It's just not as polished as it is on the Mac. Now, this is assuming if the game would even run. When I first tried to start the game for recording, haha, nope. Many games and programs use QuickTime for audio and video playback. Therefore, Apple QuickTime has to be installed in the system. Let me throw this out there. QuickTime is a pain. Myst for Windows 3.1 installs its own version of QuickTime in the game folder. This conflicted with the version that was already installed in here, so it's time to reinstall Windows 3.1 and lose the lovely pink theme I had set up. But it did the job. It turns out I'm not the only one who ran into issues. In the PC world, it was amazing if anything worked at all before Windows 95 came out. Speaking of which, When Microsoft released Windows 95, it wasn't too surprising that Broderbund made an updated release of Myst for it. This one came in the big box, a rather cheaply made big box from 1997 to 1998. This later release was sold under Broderbund's new games division, Red Orb. Now for a slight diversion of what's in this slightly beat up box. Beyond the game itself, there's a registration card, troubleshooting guide, oh those poor Windows 3.1 souls, 3 Myst hints for dire need, and order a hint book for an extremely dire need. Yeah, this was a time when game publishers monetized game hints and walkthroughs, before the internet made them commonplace for free. Okay, there is one more thing in this box for a game which I'll get to at some point. This release is basically the same as the Windows 3.1 original, now with autoplay for Windows 95, proper QuickTime installation, and the game is a 32-bit executable. And yes, the game still works on Windows 3.1, for those who really enjoy their bad times. The CD also has a trailer for The Last Express, which is very amusing to see with the circumstances surrounding that game. To sum up this version, it's basically the original PC version updated for a usable OS. Masterpiece Edition, because plain old Myst just wasn't enough. This is the one most people swear by as being the best version of the game. In a strange twist, the CD insert has an ad for Prince of Persia 3D. That was a game which was most definitely received very, very well. Already, this autoplay is very bare bones and generic. Just an ominous red orb. Also, this version is cursed. Something is off with the ALO free trial offer, plus some box copies I've seen have a label for some variant of bundled software. What is going on here? Well, corporate shenanigans. The Learning Company went on a spree of buying out other developers and publishers of edutainment, thanks to people like Kevin O'Leary in charge of these decisions. Yep, that is the guy from the TV show Shark Tank. TLC brought out Broderbund for their edutainment software, and kept the Red Orb Games division. I should also add, quite amusingly, how they somehow bought the publisher of that terrible Myst parody. So many Learning Company products at the time were treated like shovelware, because screw you, Kevin. On the bright side, it has some noteworthy improvements for this Masterpiece Edition. The higher image quality is the big one. No longer bound to 256 color palettes, Myst can now run in true color mode and it looks lovely. The game now has a built-in guide and hint system, which I admittedly find a tad excessive. If nice to have, I'm honestly surprised they included this. With the emergence of the internet and online Myst guides, they could have used this as a chance to sell people on America Online. Now there is a claim of higher quality remastered sound. I have only noticed that in the opening Myst flyby. Now in stereo. Speaking of which, the opening animation now runs at a slightly higher frame rate, along with high resolution flybys in the linking books. As much as people consider this the best version, it's still derived from the Windows 3.1 release and it carries over its rough aspects. The music is still cut down, the sound is almost the same, and many FMVs are straight from the original Windows release. This is not to say that Masterpiece Edition is bad, it's a very good version of Myst. One of the better ones in a land where there really isn't an ideal version of Myst so far. Now I did run into technical issues on VMs and actual hardware. My recent video on setting up a thin client for retro gaming had me run into audio crackling issues due to QuickTime. Guess what? It also happened under a VM. It took me a few tries until I got it working just fine under a Windows ME VM. No joke. Now putting this game under a VM really exposes the speed-sensitive issues of the Windows editions of Myst. Now onto a curious release, Masterpiece Edition for the Mac. I don't have a CD copy of it because it's relatively rare, aside from another means of getting a copy. I was turned off this version for the longest time because of this hugely prominent Amazon review, which basically says it's just a PC version ported back to Mac, so there really didn't seem to be a point for it. However, I thought to give it a try anyway. This release came later than the Windows counterpart, as shown by the Mattel Interactive logo it opens with. Onward to the game and wait! The music in the Cyan logo is different. Curious. Then in the intro, click on the Myst book and it has a nice little transition not found in any other version. Link to the island itself, and there are turn transitions with animation twins! What is this insanity? This shouldn't exist at all! So what gives? It turns out the Mac version of Masterpiece was handled by Presto Studios, the developer of Journeyman Project. At the time, they were working on the third Myst game. The CD even includes a trailer rendered at 30 frames per second, which is an absolute tease compared to the final release. Upon further inspection, it appears they just straight up rebuilt the game under a new engine for Mac, officially completing a full circle. The game CD also has a hidden folder for the data, just like other Presto Studios releases. I can assume rebuilding the game was their only option, because Apple brutally murdered HyperCard. Now they could have theoretically done a straight port from Windows with the many games Broderbund released using MOHAWK on Mac, though I suspect that wasn't an option due to either the Myst version of MOHAWK not being compatible, or publisher mismanagement. The latter option might be more likely than originally thought, as the learning company was sold out to Mattel. Also, we are not done with you, Kevin. Mattel bought them at $4.2 billion, and it turned into one of the biggest disasters in company acquisitions, with Mattel losing $3.6 billion over it. I have a few learning company games from the Mattel period, and now I can't help but see the opening Mattel logo differently now. Screw you, Kevin. Now back to Myst. Masterpiece Mac is essentially a really polished up version of the PC Masterpiece release. They brought back the slide transitions from the Mac original, now with, tween animations. The sound transition's better, with the ability to handle multiple sounds at once. The hand cursors are back ported out of a certain other game. Zip mode now has a lovely transition. Some items now have a fade effect for extra polish. The save dialogue has its wonderful appearance. And out of all the versions I've tested so far, this one doesn't suffer from speed-related issues. Not to call this the perfect version of Myst, it still has a slightly lower quality FMVs and the cut-down music from the PC versions. They even brought the Skull Loop and the redone Channelwood video to Mac users for the first time. Now, there's still not an ideal version of Myst here, but the Mac Masterpiece version is very underrated. I will say it's one of the better ones I have seen here. There's even a cat Easter egg. This cat is known as Pepper. The programmer, Rudolph, I don't really want to pronounce that last name right now, tried to include this cat on every game he worked on. There is supposedly another Easter egg. It's just I can't confirm its existence. It's supposed to open the web browser to a link, showcasing early development footage of Myst spin-off Uru. I have tried many times and have not gotten it to work, despite what this other Amazon review claims. Overall, this Mac version can also be considered superior to its PC counterpart, and it doesn't have those AOL free trials. Now I'm far from done, but this video is starting to get out of hand. The next batch of releases will be covered in part 2, the third dimension, and back, and back, and back. To the viewers who have made it this far in this mess of Myst releases, thanks for watching. Feel free to give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe and keep your eye out for part 2. Maybe use that fancy bell icon or something, I don't know. Anyway, I hope to see you next time.